Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 179 is out, and this is one of those chapters where Akutami trolled us with this one really bad. Because from last chapter, chapter 178, we expect a 3-domain expansion battle because that cliffhanger was insane. So going into chapter 179, we expect this triple domain expansion display. But sadly, it was interrupted by Kurorishi the cockroach. Akutami played us all with this one.
We have been hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, and flat out deceived.
But despite that, chapter 179 was still a solid chapter. This chapter had a lot of explaining. But before I get into this review, you guys gotta explain to me why you haven't subscribed yet with notification bells on and leaving a like on the video if you want to see more Jujutsu Kaisen content on the channel. Now, the chapter starts off with Ishiguro, Takako, and our boy Yuta activating their domain expansions, with all their cursed energy flaring up ready for this 3-way battle. And like I said previously, this chapter was very explanation heavy, so the narration explained to us that when domains collide, their respective must-hit techniques will cancel one another out. And this is information that we already know about because we saw this happen early on in the story versus Gojo and Jogo. However, the difference here was a battle between 2 domain expansions head-to-head, and we know that when one is more powerful than the other, the stronger domain expansion overrides the weaker one. But since 3 are active at the same time, this makes things a little bit more complicated because 3 domain expansions happening at the same time is a new concept in the story. Because in my last chapter review, I even said that with all 3 of these characters activating their domain expansions at the same time, this can cause a collision course. However, I didn't expect that collision course to be a cockroach, but we will get to that. Now, it's further explained that to keep Okkotsu from getting an advantage here, they cannot let Rika enter the barrier. Because we know that Rika is a cursed energy chain link for Yuta, Takako and Ishiguro know that they gotta get rid of Yuta fast because he has the upper hand with Rika. Because we see that Rika is only 20 meters away, so they're trying to get rid of Yuta in a matter of seconds, which makes it impossible for Rika to catch up to the barrier. Which honestly, this is a good idea to make Yuta be in a vulnerable position or to create a disadvantage because we already know on his own he's already way too powerful. But with the ring connected to Rika, he gets an insane boost in power, he can copy cursed techniques, and also the added addition of using cursed weapons. So with Yuta being inside domain expansions and Rika not being there, if she was there, it may give him the ability to copy other domain expansions. And if Yuta has that ability, then this fight will be already over if that was the case if Rika was inside. However, Rika not being inside this barrier with Yuta only made things worse because the will of the real Rika, Orimoto, simply cannot allow something like that to happen. In that moment when Rika's eyes starts to open up, it's explained to us that Rika's output power has reached a new level. And it makes sense because if you notice, every time Rika's eye has opened up, this is where she gets extremely clingy, lovey-dovey, yet dangerous over Yuta. We saw this in their battle with JJK Volume 0 with Geto, and we know that when Rika got into this state, that is when they did the devastating blow that finished the fight by surpassing the limits of cursed energy. We were on the cusp of seeing something so special from Rika, something that could surpass the limits of cursed energy, but sadly, it was interrupted in that moment by this cockroach because it jumps inside the barrier with leaving lesser forms of cockroaches attacking Rika. Now, when I first saw this, I was confused at first because I'm like, isn't this Kuroroshi, the same creature that Yuta killed previous chapters back? But from the explanation from the narration, before going dormant, Kuroroshi managed to reproduce via parthenogenesis, and when the parent died, the cursed energy from the entirety of Japan's sphere was transferred into the body of his children. Even if the player Kuroroshi has died, the cursed spirit of Kuroroshi continues to thrive. So because of Japan and Jujutsu Kaisen has such a strong fear of cockroaches, the spirit of Kuroroshi will continue to live on as long as he reproduces because that fear of cockroaches create negative emotions, and we know that negative emotions create cursed energy, and that cursed energy transfer into the children of Kuroroshi. A very similar concept of this cursed spirit grasshopper we saw in Shibuya that Yuji fought. Because of the fear of this insect, this is what created this cursed spirit. And since we know in Jujutsu Kaisen when you have a fear of bugs, that bug can become a cursed spirit, I'm very surprised we have yet to see a spider cursed spirit, because I'm pretty sure that 99.9% of all people in the world have some sort of fear of spiders. So spider cursed spirit in the story, Akutami make it happen because that's something I want to see. Now, it's further explained to us that is very complex when it's a 3-way domain expansion battle happening because of the differences between the internal and external conditions that were set around the barrier. So since an intruder steps into this barrier, it collapses. So just because of this cockroach, we potentially miss one of the best fights we could have seen in Jujutsu Kaisen. So this mystery behind Yuta's domain expansion is still intact. My guess is that we're not going to see Yuta's domain expansion until we see him fight Kenjaku, because we know that that's his goal in this Colon game. And if it's going to be safe for that, then I'm totally fine with it. But man, this was just such a tease, because the likelihood of us seeing any encounter with 3 domain expansions happening at once is going to be rare. But of course, the possibilities for us to see something like this is still there, because Akutami wouldn't show this if this wasn't something that he was going to later explore in a later time. Now, after the domain expansion collapsed, Takako put her intentions on the Cursed Spirit Cockroach. However, she was blindsided by Yuta when he took advantage of the opportunity that she was not paying attention. He kicks her in the back. Now, after using a domain expansion, your techniques will burn out. It becomes much harder to use. So when Takako tried to use her sky manipulation technique, she could not really properly handle it. Orishi takes advantage of this by hitting her with his curse tool by cutting her arm off, and then Rika shows up and starts eating her arms. And that is really bad, because Ishiguri even mentions that using reverse curse technique, recovering a missing limb, is no easy trick, especially since they just used domain expansion. Takako is extremely low on curse energy. Ishiguri takes advantage of this and tells her that she has not been invited to the meal. And in that moment, we find out that his curse technique is curse energy release, followed up by a curse energy blast, a blast that hit Korishi and Takako. Now, even though this blast was extremely devastating, I don't believe that Takako is dead. I see her surviving because she already talked about living in regret, and Akutami has definitely put some more focus on her backstory of what the Fujiwara did to her when she used to be a captain of the assassin group. So her staying alive can add in some more Fujiwara lore, and also the conversations that she's been having with Yuta. Yuta telling her that you cannot live for yourself. It's almost like he's trying to break her character down and also to submit to Yuta, and they can become allies. Because I really don't see her as an evil character, but that's just my theory on that. Now, what's extremely unique about Ishiguri's attack power is that he is the only sorcerer who has the same attack output, whether he's using a curse technique or not. So all his powers across the board are all the same, and that's probably why his curse technique is called Cursed Energy Release. Now, after that attack, this only put Yuta and Ishiguri, the 2 left standing, after Yuta did the finishing blow on Koroshi. However, this fight may be really bad for Yuta, because when this chapter ended, it's explained that Yuta's curse technique has not yet recovered. And since it hasn't recovered yet, Yuta is at a disadvantage here. Even though Rika, her eye is still open, so there is a surge in power for her, but for Yuta, this is extremely dangerous, especially us finding out that Ishiguri, his attack power will remain the same even if he's not using his curse technique. So this is a very dangerous position for Yuta. If I were to guess, I think this fight is going to go on for another 2 chapters. But you guys comment below and tell me what you think about this. Did you enjoy this chapter, and what's your thoughts on it? Also, leave a like on the video, subscribe if you are new. You guys have an awesome life. Take care of yourselves, stay blessed, and we're out.